that will be, the focus for me in 2025. Get as many node runners out there, get as many people holding their own keys with, things like the ETF and MSTR. There's a lot of people interested in Bitcoin, but they're not actually Bitcoiners, right? They're just, they want the exposure to Bitcoin.
Welcome to the Transformation of Value. I wanted to jump into it, man, just straight into the deep end, and talk a little bit about the big topic, freedom and freedom technology. And I guess starting off, trying to understand what those things mean to you, if that's okay, please.
Yeah, so I think for me, freedom is about, choice. Choosing who you want to interact with, choosing who you want to deal with, and really just about, when it comes to a technological perspective, not inviting trusted third parties that don't really need to be there. And so for me, that's what freedom is all about. It's the freedom to choose who you want in your digital life and who you don't want as well. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what it means. But yeah, I've been, trying to, over the many years it takes, is to remove these trusted third parties out of my digital life. And so that's kind of what I've been focusing on. And that comes to money, through my emails, through, my data, my photos, my location, all of those sorts of things. I try and remove as much as I can away from these third parties who tend to sell people out, really. So yeah, that to me is what freedom is all about.
Yeah, and thank you. What kicked off this journey towards exploring freedom?
Okay, so I started really when I understood what Bitcoin meant, in that I don't have to use a central bank, I don't have to use a bank, or another trusted third party to send, value across the internet. Then I thought, well, what else can I sort of self-host? What else can I do by myself? And that's where I sort of just dived into things like Nextcloud. I just went in and said, okay, well, what are these bits of data that I need to protect? And how do I go about protecting that as well? And making sure that data is not taken away from me, but also, it is kept secure and self-hosted, and it's always with me, rather than with another corporation or faceless organization that I don't really want to deal with. So that kind of, Bitcoin was the start of that journey. And then it sort of just went down as like, well, if I can self-host this, then what else can I self-host? And then I just went down like video cameras and, all sorts of gadgets, those smart things that we use at home. And then, Home Assistant and all these sorts of things. I just started using and building up a profile. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And you're based in Australia, and I'm just wondering if there was anything in particular, or there was something about Australia that began that exploration. I know you've done a lot of travel as well, but that relationship maybe with the state, can you elaborate a bit more on that, please?
Yeah, look, I think Australia for me has always been a fantastic country. Like, I've always loved living here. It is a phenomenal place. It's given me all the opportunities in the world, really. I've got my private pilot license. I'm a chartered accountant. The opportunities here, the job opportunity, it's fantastic, right? But at the same time, I think things turned probably 2021, 2022, during those COVID years.
Something happened.
where we started to go, hey, this doesn't feel like Australia anymore. And yeah, look, the self-hosting stuff and all that freedom desire, it wasn't really Australia that, sort of, I guess, I think what happened was, what happened during COVID solidified what I already kind of knew. and what I was already trying to achieve and what I was trying to, move towards. And so, yeah, like I just feel like that's a better outcome. And, what happened during those years just kind of just solidified it, really. Like it wasn't, oh my God, color me shocked. This is, world-changing stuff here. I saw it for what it was well before. And I kind of, it wasn't a wake-up call for me. It was more, hey, I was so right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. And you mentioned Bitcoin was the beginning of this journey, and then you started looking at other things, including email and other services that maybe a lot of people outsource to the cloud, basically someone else's computer.
Yep.
But what do you think, if we're walking through this kind of journey of freedom, I mean, what do you think are some really important first steps that people can think about? Maybe people who've never considered freedom or freedom tech as a concept.
I think, look, there's a few things that you can do that are like 5-minute quick wins, and then there's 5-year ordeals where you have to get out of this relationship with Google, right? So some of the quick wins that you can do is like maybe use a VPN. That's a very, very quick win. Changing your DNS on your router, something like that is a quick win, right? So instead of using the default DNS that's provided by your internet service provider, that is obviously logging it. And well, here in Australia, it's logged for up to 2 years, your internet history, by default. And if you just change something in your router, in your settings, you can sort of remove that. That's a very, very quick win. And then there's obviously the harder stuff like, getting rid of your email. Like you may have had your emails, since you were 16 years old, and trying to sort of, make sure that that's all moved over to maybe a more freedom-respecting hosting platform, like maybe Proton Mail or Tutanota. Those, that might be, something that you can do as well. But there's a whole raft of things that you can, sort of move towards that, takes ownership of your own data. And setting up something like a Nextcloud or your own network attached storage, where you own the data and not somebody else. And there's other things that you can do in between as well, like encrypting things and then putting them onto the cloud, so that if someone was to sort of want to read that information, there's nothing for them to read. But the issue with that as well, the trade-off is that they can just cut off the data altogether and not service you anymore. So yeah, look, there's a few things that people can do that will, I guess, help them become a little bit more freedom. Well, take back that freedom from corporations and people who are trying to really just spy on you, really.
Yeah, it's interesting, Ketan, because there's sort of two things here. There's the freedom of self-hosting and running your own stack, and then there's also the privacy aspect. And I think sometimes those are the same thing, and sometimes they can be different things. And I often think of maybe people who are not so technical and kind of what are the easy wins and what is maybe not perfect but still better than what they've currently got. For example, instead of using WhatsApp, maybe using something like Signal.
Yeah.
And that's a service that you just download off the App Store. You're not necessarily going to self-host that or verify the code or any of that stuff yourself. But there's arguably more privacy there than WhatsApp. And so what are your thoughts on that trade-off between going deep into running your own stack and kind of little baby steps that are in the right direction?
And I think that's what needs to eventually happen. You don't just really just dive into the deep end and see how you go. It's not going to work that way. Yeah. You're going to sink, and pretty quickly as well. You do have to take small steps, and it may take a few years to get to your final destination, if there ever is one in the privacy front. But a small, those quick wins that just moving away from, messaging services that are, we know that are invasive, versus, something like Signal, which is a bit more open source and, well vetted and trusted by the privacy community, is a better step than going down, like full self-hosting your own matrix server, for example.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I just think even my own family and friends, getting them onto Signal's pretty easy.
It is.
But,
It's a quick win
it's a
to
quick
get that
win.
network. Yeah, it's a quick win to get that network effect. And Signal provides it beautifully.
Yeah.
And for me, even my family is all on Signal, and it just works like a breeze. So yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing, looking at the literature on freedom and privacy technology in particular, there is this idea of threat modeling and sort of what is your threat vector, and kind of there is a rabbit hole you can go down where. So I actually recently watched that old Mel Gibson film, Conspiracy Theory. I don't know if you remember from the 90s. And I've been going through those kind of films from the 90s, Enemy of the State, Conspiracy Theory, The Fugitive, and it's all like, the state is coming to get you. And I think there's some truth in there, but I also wonder, how do you model your own personal threats, and how do you use that to make your decisions potentially?
Yeah. Okay. So from my perspective, the government, if they wanted me, they will take me. That's it. There is no real, I guess, hiding from them. It's really, really difficult. If that's your threat model, I think you're going to be in a very, very difficult situation, or you've probably put yourself into a very difficult corner. But if you want to protect yourself from other parties, like, for example, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, if you want to protect yourself from, other just, small-time hackers and that sort of stuff, then, I think it is achievable. I think it's just, it's something that you can sort of actively work towards, to remove these services and these things that they have, that sort of lock you into an ecosystem. Another example is Apple, of course. I think corporations and other individuals, definitely you can, sort of protect yourself against. But if you're looking to, evade the government, I think that's going to be a much, much more harder or much more difficult task.
Yeah.
So that's how I see it.
Yeah.
Look, that's a tough one, really.
Yeah. No, I understand. And there's it's sort of, it's a spectrum, right? There's certain things that already out of the box give you some privacy from the state, and those are relatively easy things. But then there's maybe other things that are, at the end of the day, if you're a citizen of a country, that it's generally going to be known where you are, etc. But the kind of that privacy and being able to choose when you reveal yourself is certainly powerful, and having more of that can't be a bad thing. But Ketan, I did want to talk a little bit about Ministry of Nodes. This is sort of the umbrella for a lot of your educational content, and sort of if you could share sort of what that is and where it came from, if that's okay, please.
Yeah, no. So Ministry of Nodes is an idea that a prominent podcaster and myself had, Stefan Libera. We thought, hey, look, we need to level up Bitcoin education, because it was at that time fairly weak, and we thought, people need to learn how to hold their own keys, but also run their own Bitcoin nodes. And whilst Stefan had a fantastic podcast, he spoke to, just, I guess he would talk about the principles and, roughly how you would go about doing it. Whereas I would more focus on, okay, this is how you're going to achieve these principles that Stefan has spoken about, in his podcast, in an achievable way. So how do you hold your own keys? How do you run your own node? These are types of, educational content that we would, sort of give out to people. And it like, if you want to know, like, it just started, I just started it kind of like I was listening to Ministry of Sounds. And so I just thought, okay, well, Ministry of Nodes sounds like a great name. We both agreed on it. And, we started it in 1 July 2019. And we had a seminar. I think like 4 people attended that seminar. And then, like the YouTube content came out, and then, it just started to grow from there. And then you've got, tutorials that are showing you basically how to run your own Bitcoin node and how to, connect that node up to your own wallet and that sort of stuff. And then, we do like, private consulting as well. During the COVID years, Stefan decided to sort of step back and out of Australia. He thought that, Australia was a bit of a stranglehold on him. So he departed, and he just left me the whole business to sort of just carry on. And so since then, I've started to sell, prepackaged nodes as well, alongside that tutorial that shows you how I build them. And then if you want the end product, you can just buy it off me if you so wish. So that's what I've been that's what I've been just doing. And pushing out those nodes and helping people to, with their Bitcoin related questions and even self-hosting stuff as well. So that's kind of just what we've been doing.
That's awesome. And how did you fall into that education space? Had you done anything prior to that in other fields, teaching or?
No, nothing like that. I feel like if, when you teach something, you actually learn yourself. And it's kind of, it just solidifies your own understanding as well. So when someone asks you a question and you don't know the answer, it's like, oh, I better go and find that out. That sounds, something interesting. So that's what I try and do. And that's what I've been sort of, I don't really have any formal, experience, but I have been through, university. So if you notice, my videos are kind of tutorial based. So it's very, very much mimicking the education that I received, I guess. So that's kind of, that's my style, and that's what I just, have gone with.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. And certainly it goes through all of the steps you need. And I like the emphasis on the command line and verifying packages and all of that stuff that you go through with your tutorials. But I was also wondering, when it comes to Bitcoin education more broadly, I mean, there's so much out there to learn, right? There's kind of quite a lot of things, and it's changing all the time. What do you think are the areas where there's the most surface area to perhaps build more educational content, or where there maybe needs to be more information?
With respect to Bitcoin?
Yes.
Look, back in 2013, when I first started, it was very light on in terms of education. You had to sort of dissect what was conspiracy theory, actual conspiracy theory, to what was actually true. And it was difficult. We just had random Reddit posts, and, that they were just, throwaway accounts. You really had to really decipher what, fact and fiction. And it was really, really tough. But if you look in today in 2025, I think that the signal there is phenomenal, right? If you just, open Twitter and follow a few Bitcoiners, they will be, over time, over a year-long period of lurking, they will point you to resources that I think are phenomenal. Like, one just came out recently called What's the Problem? It's a 40-minute, video on what exactly is the problem. And I've been trying to, tell people this for over 10 years, and this guy's just done it in 40 minutes. And if you're really, really stressed for time, put it on 2-speed, and you'll get it done in 20. Like, it is phenomenal educational content out there. I wish I had that, because then I wouldn't have spent, the thousands of hours trying to figure this out. Look, in terms of opportunities, I'm really, really, really pressed to find, an avenue that hasn't been, uncovered. I think you just need to be pointed in the right direction. Otherwise, I think you're going to end up down some paths that you may not want to take, other coins and other, just general mistakes that I think Bitcoiners can make. But generally speaking, I think there's a solid signal. You follow a few Bitcoiners on Twitter, and you'll get the signal, and they will point you into the right direction. I think that's I think that's probably the best way of doing it.
That's That's fascinating, and I ask as well because last year I did a workshop or hosted a workshop. It was kind of relatively entry level, and certainly the question of like what is money and why is any of this even important is kind of one of the first barriers. That once you're past that, everything else is just a matter of following the tutorials and RTFM. But before that, what is the problem? Why do we need this? Is actually the hard part, right? And kind of getting people who are maybe curious but they don't quite see the challenges and sort of communicating that side of things. So, I mean, is that something you've tried to do? I mean, obviously over the years, tried to orange pill people, but
So for me, given the amount of time
yes.
that I've been doing it, and just the amount of heartache that I've had as well with like my percentage rates, right? I'm not a very good orange piller. I'm not going to lie. Like I sit here as an educational, to Ministry of Notes, and I'm telling you, I'm not very good at orange pilling people from zero, right?
Yeah.
It's not my cup of tea. I leave that to like Stefan. I leave that to, what's the problem guy. These are the guys who are going to probably change hearts and minds. I'm probably going to be like, okay, I genuinely want to speak with people who are kind of already along their journey a little bit further, rather than, fresh, don't get it, have thousands of questions, which have, by the way, all been answered satisfactorily. But I just want to speak more with people who are on board with Bitcoin and just want to improve their existing knowledge of it and how to achieve it on a day-to-day basis. That's kind of where I sort of fit in more than, hey, I want to do this, So look, I've absolutely decimated relationships in the past as a result of trying to get people on board. It's come off as arrogant. It's come off as, narcissistic. These are all words that have been thrown at me. I'm a conspiracy theorist. I'm a, lunatic. So at that point, that kind of after, 10 years of that, or even just 7 or 5, really, you start to go, well, look, you become a bit more recluse. And you only want to focus on people who kind of get it. But yeah, it's tragic that has happened. But yeah, it's part of my journey and my experience. And yeah, I've decimated relationships over this, but I'll still die on the hill for it.
Yeah, no, that's a shame when that happens. I mean, I've been through that myself, so I understand. But another thing I wanted to just explore with you is the Lightning Network. So this is something you provide a lot of tutorials on, and certainly it's a very exciting space, and sort of maybe a little bit harder, just a little bit harder than running a Bitcoin node. But what has been your approach to the Lightning Network? How have you seen that evolve since it started, and sort of how do you feel about the future of Lightning and Lightning education?
Okay, so with Lightning, I've had an interesting relationship with Lightning. When it first sort of came out and started to become popular, I ran my own Lightning node. Stefan had his Lightning node, and we were flinging sats. I was in somewhere like Vanuatu, and Stefan was in Germany, and we were just flinging sats between each other without the permission of anyone. And our nodes were back home in Sydney, and we were laughing. We were like, wait till the world catches on this. No KYC, none of the BS. It was a dream. Then it went into sort of, how do we back this thing up? If my hard drive failed, or if Stefan's hard drive failed, are we going to lose some sats here? What's going to happen? And so, yeah, the backup scenario, whilst it is possible, I still think is challenging, particularly with, channel backups and that sort of stuff. You have to sort of keep on top of that if you're running your own node. However, these days, many people on the Lightning Network are just using a custodial solution, or using something like Phoenix, where you still hold the keys, but they provide you with the LSP type model, Lightning Service Provider. And so I think that's a game changer as well, where companies can come in and sort of help you out with the nuts and bolts. Whereas for me personally, I know what's kind of the nuts and bolts of it, so I know how to on a day-to-day basis run a Lightning node. But it is involved and it is very technical. It is very command line based. Whereas if you just use something like Zeus, and use their LSP, or go fully custodial for a small amount of funds on Wallet of Satoshi, for example, you'll get a great experience. You'll get a fantastic experience. But if you have to start opening channels, dealing with liquidity, all that sort of stuff, it's just going to take up capital. It's going to take up time, and you're going to have to, you may get some routing failures and that sort of stuff, which, by the way, have significantly improved over the years. So I'm hopeful that Lightning is something that we can use. I still use it. I still use it for payments. I still use it to receive money. And I think it's a great tool that we have, particularly in a high fee environment as well. So when Bitcoin, seems to, want to do 300 sats per VByte, for whatever reason, then falling back to the Lightning Network to do those and settle those transactions is a really, really good tool to have in the toolkit. But like if it's, a low fee environment, that's when you can start to open up channels and build for that, future state as well. So I'm quite okay with where Lightning is at. It's tough for, the full on, if you want to do it, self-sovereign type, but there are other, in-betweeners like Zeus and Phoenix and that sort of stuff that will help you get there without being too technical and straight just on your mobile phone. So yeah, look, I think I think it's great to be using that layer 2 technology. I have been told though that I don't know if that can scale like Lightning Network to 8 billion people. Maybe we're just not ready for Bitcoin for 8 billion people just yet. And even on chain, like not every person in the world can have a UTXO. Is the common thread that I'm hearing out there. So we still don't really have a Visa style solution, but I think Lightning is probably the best solution that we have today. Yeah,
that's fascinating. And there's perhaps an emergent effect where, as more people want to use it, the solutions make themselves known to us. I am curious, just as a tangent to that, whether you've explored things like Fedimints and that sort of side of things.
So I think if we have an array of options, like I feel like Bitcoiners are doing the scattergun approach, like just throw shit out on the wall and see what sticks. So Fedimint would be part of that, just throwing some ideas out there to see how can we potentially scale this and then grow the pie. The eCash and then the Cashew Mints and all that sort of stuff is coming on, and I'm interested to see where it goes. Personally, I haven't looked too far into it because I'm already kind of in the self-sovereigns camp. I don't think Fedimint would be for someone like me, so I don't really, want to degrade my own sovereignty to go down someone who can potentially rug me. But I understand that, if we do have these little Fedi banks or mini banks running around, I think it's a better solution than, say, the big four banks controlling everything and, blocking all of our transactions and all that sort of stuff. So, I think it's better than what we currently have in the fiat system. But is it the best? Time will tell.
Yeah. Fascinating. And I also was curious, Ketan, on your use of the value for value model and how that's helped your business and what you're doing.
Yeah, so I generally, for consultations, I don't really charge a fee. It's just pay what you think it's worth. And it's been actually really good. There is a little bit of a difference to what an American would tip versus what, say, someone from India would tip. And I'm okay with that. Do you know what I mean? As long as you, respect the time and the effort that I'm putting in, and you pay whatever you think it was worth, I'm happy with it. And I also just get to meet Bitcoiners, and I think it's always a pleasure to speak to people who want to get involved and want to learn more. So it's an opportunity for me. I think it's a great thing, and I enjoy it, and I've never really been burned by it because the guys who pay really, really well make up for the guys who, in numbers of sats wouldn't pay as much. And I'm happy with that. That's fine. Now, with the shop, though, I mean, there's a cost price there. So, I have to charge an amount. But, value for value for my time has been it's been great.
Yeah. And I mean, just extending that a little bit though to maybe what other businesses could look at and kind of maybe other services. I mean, do you think this has a broader impact on the future Bitcoin economy? Is this something that others can maybe look to adopt or?
Yeah. And this is the thing. I think because we're in this phase of, we don't actually know what a sat is worth. It's really hard to price what you think without referring to a fiat currency. Like usually it'll be like $100 an hour, right? And you're like, okay, that's fine. But then when we go into a sats world, what do you charge? Like we're still discovering what is a million sats worth, what is a Bitcoin worth, and so it's kind of become a little bit more difficult to sort of price yourself and then have to halve it every single time because the price has just gone, the value of it has gone up. But I think that more businesses hopefully will take that on board. But obviously they've also got a cost. Like if you've got a cost base, then I think you need at least a little bit of value there that is sort of baked in. But if it's kind of like a consulting based or something like that, and you tip whatever you think it's worth, that's fine as well. I admittedly I'm for choice for whatever businesses want to decide to do and what they think is best. I'm happy for them to make the call and see what sticks and learn, because that's how I've done it as well. Like I don't know how much to charge, and I'm just like, all right, well, value for value seems like the best option for me. It may not work for everybody. It works for me. It works for a few. I know Nosta, the guys on there, like you send out a post, and you get there's a couple of sats back, and that post just ends up being a really good post, and you end up with a few $100 for it. That's quite cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's really interesting, and sort of seeing more of this within the Bitcoin world. But it is not necessarily a new concept, though. I mean, it has existed in other forms, and it can be very valuable, as you say, because you're not putting a price on yourself. You're letting the value come to you from the other person, and you can be surprised quite pleasantly when it comes through, and it's a very large amount, for example.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for 2025. What are you looking forward to? What's up for Ministry of Nodes? What's up for you personally?
Yeah, so for me, 2025, I want to, put out more nodes out there. Whether that's, through my tutorials where you build it yourself, which I strongly encourage, or you want to purchase one off me. That would be my goals for 2025. Get as many nodes out there as possible, so that we're all using, our own node rather than somebody else's. And I think that really matters from a privacy perspective, as well as just your own self-sovereignty perspective as well. So I think that will be, the focus for me in 2025. Get as many node runners out there, get as many people holding their own keys with, things like the ETF and MSTR. There's a lot of people interested in Bitcoin, but they're not actually Bitcoiners, right? They're just, they want the exposure to Bitcoin. And that's all well and good, but you can get rugged in those services. You can get rugged via an ETF. You can get rugged through wrapping Bitcoin in something else. Do you know what I mean? So I just want people to sort of hold their own keys, run their own node. The more I can do that, that kind of helps people out. But yeah, that's kind of it. Like just, get more people on board and get people understanding the technology and using it to their advantage. Yeah.
That's awesome. And if people want to follow you, they want to see tutorials, they want to see what you're up to, where can they go, Ketan?
Yeah, so youtube.com/Ministry of Nodes, or you can just go to the website, ministryofnodes.com, and that will have all of the links to, the YouTube, the shop, some articles that, both Stefan and I have written. And yeah, you can find us there.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much.
No worries.